All right, Ronnie, first of all, give me your name, your spelling, and, that you're on the board, any kind of credentials you want.
Sure. First name is Ronnie, Ronnie. Last name is Schnepf. It's Schnepf, as in Frank. I've been a volunteer with the Oyster Railroad Museum since spring of 2010, so almost 13 years now. Been serving on the board of directors since the end of 2019, I believe, or 2020. I'm now the chairman of the Locomotive 35 committee, co-chairman, I should say. And I continue to do volunteer work down here at the yard.
And what do you do in your regular life? Go ahead.
I'm a workers' comp attorney, so represent injured workers for workers' comp claims.
Okay, great. Ronnie, tell me about what's going on today. Just give me a glimpse of what everybody's doing here, the different types of volunteers, that have come out today. I know there's a little less than there was before.
Sure. We have a variety of people who came out today. Basically, what's happening is we are building the third of what's ultimately going to be about 7 or 8 tracks. These are permanent tracks on which our historic railroad equipment is going to be displayed. For the past couple of decades, we've been working in this yard up here. This used to be part of the Long Island Railroad yard, and everything is just kind of haphazardly stored throughout the yard. Now we are actually in the process of building the museum. We have 2 tracks in so far, and track 3, which is being installed behind me literally as we speak, this is ultimately going to be where we rebuild Locomotive 35.
Tell me the significance, just briefly, of Locomotive 35, its importance, why this is such a, kind of a big moment in railroad preservation, I guess.
Locomotive 35 is one of 2 surviving Long Island Railroad locomotives. It's a class called the G5S. It was a Pennsylvania Railroad home-built locomotive. Long Island Railroad used to be owned by the Pennsylvania Railroad. This locomotive was specifically designed for commuter service shortly in the 1920s. So this locomotive was in active commuter service on the Long Island Railroad as Long Island suburbanized. So it's very much a part of the history of the development of Long Island. It was in 1955, Locomotive 35 was the last Long Island Railroad steam locomotive to operate in revenue service.
And you were saying that when this is completed, we'll be sitting, can you explain that? It'll be sitting on those tracks, correct?
Yes, so we're in the process of restoring the locomotive. It's not going to be restored to full operation. We're not going to be putting it under steam where it could be operated under its own power, but it will be fully cosmetically restored, and the running gear, meaning the wheels and the rods of the locomotive, will be operationally restored so that the locomotive can be towed around the museum site onto and off of the turntable for displays and things of that nature.
Okay, and now tell me, literally, what's going on as far as how many spikes are being put in, the history of the spikes, how old they are, just kind of give us a thumbnail on.
So the track that we're building is the materials came from a variety of sources. The wooden crossbeams are called ties. Those were donated last year by an anonymous donor. The rails are a little bit more interesting. Those actually came from an industrial area in Farmingdale, which hasn't seen freight service in several decades. The property owner really had no use for them, so he donated all of them to us, and it's enough to actually lay out the entire yard. The spikes that they're driving are essentially large nails that hold the rail to the tie. So what they're doing is basically drilling holes to put the spikes in and then hammering them into place. It's kind of similar to how they built railroads all the way back in the 1800s.
And how many are you putting in, and how old are the spikes, and where did you get them from?
So it's 90 feet of track. There's a tie spaced every 2 feet, so there should be about 45 ties there, and then there's 4 spikes per tie. So 45 times 4 comes out to probably about 180, 200 spikes when all is said and done, and all those are being driven today. So it's a decently long project. As for how old the spikes are, I can't exactly say. They do look a little bit more modern than some of the older ones we have. We want to use the newer the spike, the thicker they are, and because we're building this track to hold a steam locomotive, we don't want to use older ones because they tend to be smaller and not as sturdy. So.
But these were donated, and these were actual spikes that were used where, or all over Long Island. Like, what is there any history to the getting them and what?
They may have been an actual service on the railroad, and then we got them secondhand, like recycled or whatever. But some of them may be new. It's kind of a mix of But there's a lot of spikes. So each, like I said, for every 90 feet of track, it's going to be 45 ties. So if you extrapolate that over the entire yard, that's quite a lot. So.
Anything you want to say about the volunteers? Like, I know there was more earlier, but where are they from? Like, what's the range of age? And I know that you have someone from the Long Island Railroad. If you can just kind of talk about the scope of people and the excitement for people coming in, and the North Fork. Was there something about? Was it Riverhead that you wanted to mention? Who was here before?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have volunteers from a variety of walks of life, a variety of age groups, and a variety of organizations. We have our youngest volunteer here is 12 years old. Our oldest, I believe, is in his 70s, and we have basically everything in between. We have people who work for the railroad in various departments, ranging from conductor and train service to maintenance of equipment and things of that nature. We have engineers, attorneys.
A variety.
And as far as other organizations are concerned, we actually have someone who regularly does track work up at the Catskill Mountain Railroad upstate, who came when he saw we were doing track work today because he has a lot of experience in that area and he's helping us out. We also have a couple of volunteers from the Twin Forks NRHS chapter based out in Riverhead. They actually canceled their weekend work session to divert their resources to us today to help us out, so we're expecting them a little bit later. So.
Perfect. So this is an exciting moment.
Absolutely, yeah. I can say that in the years that I've been here, which has been about 13 years, the progress that's been going on here in the past year or two has just been exponentially growing. We were kind of dragging along for so long, and now things are finally coming together, and the museum is taking its final form. It's very exciting.